So I'm excited to be back. Thanks for having us.
Me too. It is good to see you, Elliott. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're actually in a room that we've used before, so
absolutely.
It should be
and
good.
You've had some big changes recently.
I have, but we have somebody new in the room today.
Oh, hey John, what's going on?
Hey Elliott.
This
hey
guy.
Josh, how you
this
doing?
guy. Tell us about yourself.
So hi, I'm John Jinguinot. I am now the Vice President for the Equipment segment for ARA. I am formerly the President at RentalMax in Chicago. I spent the last 6 years working with an incredible team there.
Absolutely.
A team that both of you have met, some of our key people, and we went through some rapid growth between 2018 and 2024. And earlier this year, we were acquired by Sunbelt Rentals. I think you guys may have talked about that on a previous
We
podcast.
did hear about that.
It was in this very room we talked about
I don't know
it.
if that was
Might have come up. Could have come
But really enjoyed working in the business with an incredible company, a lot of great people. During that time, I also had the opportunity to get involved with ARA. For the last 3 years, I served on the board of directors, worked with our equipment SIG committee, and had the opportunity to meet a lot of great people at ARA, including Josh, and work closely on some key projects impacting the equipment segment over the past few years. And with Josh moving into a new and exciting position, Josh, we'd love to hear more about that here in a minute.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Before we get there, though, I mean, one of the things that people probably don't realize is that you and I met monthly for, 3 years before you came on officially at ARA, while I was officially at ARA.
That's right.
So on some level, we're kind of just like swapping places here, right? That's what it feels like.
It's a little bit of musical chairs.
Because you were a week out of your contract with Sunbelt when we called you up and we're like, Josh is going to go do something else, and you were like, pick me.
That's right. That's right. I was not expecting that call, but I was ready.
So the ARA called you. You didn't call the ARA.
So I got a call from the ARA.
Wow, what an honor.
It really was. I mean, really. I can't tell you how much it meant to me that that ARA called me, shortly after Josh, notified them that he was moving into a new and exciting position at Northside Tool Rental, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that opportunity because I was thinking, hey, maybe I'll take a little bit of time off. I had spent quite a bit of time with my family over the summertime, during the transition. And I officially wrapped up my time at Sunbelt, and so I wasn't really expecting to dive right back into a new opportunity.
So let me ask the question that everybody wants to know, because I mean, we have a huge variety of people that listen to this podcast. What was it like going from an independent, and you were kind of one of the people mainly in charge, to working for Sunbelt? And I know you got to be politically correct, but at the same time, I mean, everybody wants to know what makes one of the big 5 rental houses so much different, and what was it like going from being kind of king guy, top guy for a pretty good sized Chicago rental company to being one of many with Sunbelt? What was that like?
For sure. Yeah, it's great. I mean, a great question. It was different, and it was an adjustment, and that, at times that was hard. It's like reprogramming your brain in a way, because I was used to being involved in the decision making. I was used to, not that I needed to make all the decisions. In fact, I think the way that we were structured, I preferred when other people made the decisions because I trusted so many people on our team to do that. But I mean, it's almost like, and I haven't gone through this yet, but I feel like it's almost like when you send a kid off to, like they've graduated high school and they're going off to set out on their adult life, whether that's going to work or going to college or but I almost felt that way about RentalMax because of the family type atmosphere we had there, and so that was challenging. But
did the majority of your, because I know how much you cared for your team, how did they handle the transition? I mean, obviously there's going to be people who just don't fit
Right.
And what, I mean, kind of explain that all, because I think it's a big move that, companies are thinking about acquisitions and they're trying to figure out how to navigate it. And you got to see it almost, I don't want to say firsthand because you didn't sell the company. You were part of the executive team, but you got to kind of watch it secondhand without all the financial impact, but you were of the leadership where you controlled the team.
That's right. That's right. So, the people side was really my focus through the transition.
That's right.
Because of that, we had about 130 people working in the company across 11 locations, and we knew going in that not everything was going to fit. Not everyone was going to have a place or a position that even they wanted if there was an opportunity. And so we worked, and I want to give credit to Sunbelt as well, because I thought that they were really good partners in this, and our ownership was incredibly supportive, as they had been, for our leadership team throughout. But there were some really hard conversations and some really hard days.
Give an example of that.
So, there was one day where we had to meet with everybody on our finance and administration team, and the vast majority of those people were not going to have a long-term opportunity with Sunbelt. And even before that, when we made the announcement, it came as a surprise to a lot of people. And we're making the announcement. It was one of our ownership team members, a board member, who was also on our leadership team. It was the two of us making the announcement, and we did it because we were spread out. We did that over a Zoom meeting, which was how we did a lot of our quarterly state of the company meetings. And when you're looking at the screen and you're making the announcement, and you can see the emotions.
Wow.
And that was really hard. I mean, and there isn't a second where I didn't think, in the grand scheme of what we were doing and what was in the best interest of our ownership, that it wasn't the right decision. But it's still what that
had to stay to it.
The personal side of it is the hardest part. And the flip side of that I'll say is the vast majority of the people on our team had opportunities. I mean, over 90% of the people on our team had opportunities with Sunbelt and had a lot higher upside than they had at Rental Max. We just had one of our Rental Max store managers who was just promoted to run a branch for Sunbelt Specialty Division, for example.
Wow.
And I don't think that type of opportunity would have presented itself or been available at Rental Max unless other people left.
That's right.
We just weren't going to have that type of an opportunity. I think in a lot of ways a life-changing opportunity, and so it was kind of looking through different lenses when you talk about the impact that an acquisition like this has on people, and and that was really my focus. Going
Thanks for caring as a leader, because I'm going to tell you, a lot of people miss that. But it's obvious, I can see in your face that when that call came across, I mean, you care for the people that were in your care, which I think is critical for great leadership.
No doubt. I mean, I always looked at our team as my customers, as a leader, and I think one of the lessons that I learned throughout my time at Rental Max was just how important that is. To make sure that is first. Our people are first and foremost in the decisions that we made, and I think from a growth standpoint, that was what, as our leadership team, took the most pride in, is that as we grew, we created growth opportunities for people on our team.
Perfect. So let me ask you another one. Because as Josh mentioned, Josh just went from working to the ARA to now, are you official? Is that like owner? Is that your title?
CEO. I'm a partial owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to CEO, so he's kind of going into the position that you just left. Give him a piece of advice, because I know he comes from a long background. I know, and let me just key this up. Mad respect to you, because I realize, and I don't know if everyone knows, how long of a running history you have in the rental industry. It's not like you're doing this on a whim and a prayer. How many total years have you been in the rental industry? Not with the ARA, but actually either, because I know you did Europe as well,
right.
Either running or managing rental.
Running or managing, or just cleaning cobwebs and washing equipment?
We'll count those. We'll give you partial credits.
So I would say that since I was 18, so probably
6
20 years.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, come on. 20 years or so of actually hands-on doing that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So give him a piece of advice, because he's coming back into it after how many years were you away that you worked for the ARA?
I was away for about 6 or 7 years.
So the 6 or 7 years that you ran Rental Max, Josh was out of it. Give him one thing that's happened in the last 6 years you think is a word of wisdom.
So what I felt was the most powerful tool that we used at Rental Max was clarity of vision and transparency for our team. And so, as I think both of you know, we implemented EOS at Rental Max. Josh, I know that you're going to be working in the EOS system at Northside. And when we put that in place in 2018, we had the opportunity to I don't think invent a vision for the company or core values for the company, but I think we were able to define it and make it extremely clear and share it with everyone. I always felt like that was our secret sauce at Rental Max, that we were able to show that vision to our team. We had values in place that were our pillars that, that's how we evaluated people. It was based on the core values, and then were they the right person for the right seat? And we had a lot of those conversations, throughout my time at Rental Max. But we were able to be very transparent about where we wanted to take the company. And Josh, I know that you have, high aspirations for where you can take Northside, and I have no doubt that you'll get there. I think there's power in sharing that with your team, that, hey, we are raising the bar, and I don't know exactly how we're going to get there, by the way.
Yeah,
But the bar got raised.
But the key people you need on the bus, to help you get there. It's like plugging your company into a GPS and making sure that you've identified where that destination is and where that bus is going.
That's awesome. What's different 6 years? And I realize you're very much on the pulse, Josh, because you're always involved with all the rental houses. But now you're back in the driver's seat. You're not looking at it third person, quote, coaching companies. You're on the field again.
I think one of the things that's most annoying to me is Google advertising. Because I just don't understand how it works now, and you get rusty at some things. So if you wanted to talk about just road frustrations, it would be stuff like that. But it's also some funny
Explain
things.
Google. What do you mean? Why? Of all the things I thought you were going to say, that's not the
okay.
one.
So I believe that Google advertising is a great way for smaller rental companies to target small contractors and DIY, because it is so targeted. Nobody's just shopping in rental. So it's just such a perfect tool. And it used to be 7 years ago that you would buy a keyword of something like rent an excavator near me. And that's just clearly something that I want to pay as much money as possible. If somebody wants to type in that keyword, I will pay for them to come to my business. It doesn't matter. But now Google's trying to get all fancy because people don't like to be tracked and they don't want you to know all their information. And so now Google's trying to convince me that I can track conversions, and I'm going to tell Google that a phone call or a web order is really valuable to me, and then I'm just going to trust Google to do something to get them there. Like, I don't get to pick who, I don't get to pick how. I kind of get to pick a little bit of geography and some of those things, but from what I'm learning, because people are so much less trackable, and because I think how Google likes to do things, that it's a lot more of a black box, and maybe I'm too much of a control freak for that, but I want to be like, I want that keyword right there. I don't want to trust Google to send me the right phone call, and I guess that's kind of where I'm at. But then it's the funny things, right? So like I have used a lot of rental software. I've worked at a rental software company. And when you're standing on the counter trying to write a contract for a customer, like all the right things to do, you understand rental software, but not quite enough to not make stupid mistakes.
Mm.
You know, so you're up there like trying to talk to somebody, you know, following the right processes, and you press the wrong button and you delete everything off of the ticket. And so there's so many times over the last number of weeks that I just feel like the new guy. You know, it's like being at a new school. Like you understand the subjects, you know what's going on, but there's so much personality to figure out. You keep getting lost in the buildings and stuff like that.
That's a great insight.
You know, so I feel a little bit of rusty. I feel like technology, even me being a technologist, because I wasn't actually using all of it, has passed me a little bit, and I've got to catch up or, you know, figure Google out again. And then it's just, you know, getting re-ingrained in those processes, figuring out the people, the transparency, figuring out that vision, what that next step is. And you and I were talking on the way over here. I think that, at least for me right now where I'm at, that's the key, is what's the next step? What can we do today? What's the next thing that we can do to move forward? You know, it's great that we have some awesome long-term goals, but some of that is so malleable and so complicated that it almost doesn't matter today. You know, what matters today is when a customer called, did we ask for the reservation? Did we say, can I tell you about the project? Or can you tell me about your project? It's those little things that I think that we're starting with. And, you know, then, you know, after that, I guess we'll have to figure out what that next right step is.
But you can't take that next right step until you build the foundation.
It's true.
Right.
It's true. You got to build the
And
foundation.
is the foundation to you, John? I mean, do you think it's the people, or do you think, like, what's the foundation? If everyone's sitting here and they're listening,
Yeah.
and you say you have to build the foundation, if someone's just getting started up, what is the foundation? Give me three things that have to happen.
So here was, I think this is the foundation. I think trust and respect from your people to me is where it starts. And I really focused on that, you know, when I started at Rental Max, because I think that with trust and with respect, you can accomplish anything. I think without it, you may not be able to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And you're not, you know, and you can't do it alone, right? I mean, even if you
100%.
have all of the experience, all of the knowledge in the world, you can't do it alone. And so I think, you know, to me, that is step one.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that that's exactly what you're doing. You know, coming in and trying not to change too much too quickly, and just trying to learn to understand.
Yeah, you know, everybody wants to be appreciated and validated. My concern with giving an answer like that myself, though, and we talked about this on the last episode, is everybody says it. You know, we have the best people and we give the best service, right? And everybody can't do that. And I do think we have great people, but you have to have a great process and you have to have a great strategy too. That's one of the things that I think I learned the hard way my first time around in doing this, when we were looking for investment partners in private equity, is I would get on the phone with these folks and I had this big dream, and I would kind of talk about the dream, but then I would say, but I have amazing people and I'm not the smartest person in the room, and that's what makes us great. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. And I realize now, looking back, not that wasn't incredibly important. You have to have that. But you've also got to say, I've got the right people to do this. I've got the right people to pull off this strategy. And this strategy is something that is different than what somebody else is trying to do. And so to me, it's people, process, and strategy, you know, and how you do that. And, you know, it's not easy.
So I'm going to fire right back. So one of the best quotes I've ever heard by Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker wrote some amazing management and leadership books. And Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
So when you say a great strategy, I agree, you got to know where you're going, which is kind of what you started off with, John. Know where you're going. Everybody's got to go that same direction. But do you have the right culture? Because as I'm traveling around the country and I'm working with a ton of companies, as we jokingly say, everybody says, we're going and growing. And then you literally spend days back to back with two different companies, and one of them has the right culture and one of them doesn't.
Right.
And boy, like I love the way that the rental world teaches me every day. Sometimes it's like a fish to the face, just a whack. But you sit there and you're like, this is a hot mess. And the person's like, keep going. And then you walk in the next day and everybody's like, we're all showing up to the field and we're winning today. And you're like, wow, those were two totally different cultures. And one of them is succeeding and one of them is failing.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to see right now as you're stepping back in, you're stepping into an established culture.
Yeah. 70 years. 70
Well,
years
at least
of
it's
established
new.
culture. Yeah. Yeah. 3 generations of 70 years. It's a lot of culture. I think where I would push back on what Peter Drucker said, though, is it's not just that. The right people are incredibly important, but if you have a strategy that isn't executable, then it doesn't matter. The right people can't solve a problem that can't be solved or can't be solved right. And I think the right people might tell you, well, let's not solve it that way, or let's go this direction, or let's try that instead. And so I think that's where people do overcome either no strategy or bad strategy. But for example, if my strategy today was to become United Rentals and take on United Rentals, like
It's a dream.
It doesn't matter if I have the right people.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have billions of dollars.
That's right.
They
That's right.
have done a
It's a good
really good
analogy.
job at that market. So I think that you have to have at least some vision or idea of a strategy that's winnable for your team or accessible to your team or an opportunity in the market. You have to be able to take advantage of something and then get the right people to help figure out how to best take advantage of those opportunities.
Right. Well, and that's why you are where you are, right?
That's the hope and the dream.
I think it's more than that. I think I mean you have a lot of ideas about where you want to take the company, and it's about connecting the dots backward to figure out what are the first steps to take, right?
Yes, it is always so hard for me, at least, to figure out what's just the next right step. What do we do today? Not what do we do next month, next year, 5 years from now, but what's going to make the biggest impact today?
Right.
Because we have 70 years of good history, of good culture, of being
That's
a great
right.
company and wonderful people.
How do you
on the team.
expand on that? Because there are a lot of companies out there that have a huge history, and they've become stagnant.
Mm.
And they're bringing you in, and let's admit it. When Jeff sat in that exact seat that you're sitting in now, we had this conversation, and he realized that the company needed someone like you to come in and change things. So how do you change a 70-year-old tradition without, quote, rocking the boat, but making progress?
Slowly, carefully. You pull on the parts of the culture that have been most successful and lean into those. You respect the history, you respect the experience, and then you try and put a new twist on it. I think it's not unlike what happened to both John and I in acquisitions to Sunbelt. Sunbelt had millions of reasons to make those successful, and they did a pretty good job. Most of my team is still there. John talked about how his experience was. It's not about changing things overnight, and it's not about changing everything. It's about changing the things that need to be changed that fit the business and where the business is going to be going. Like one of the things that I just was blown away by when Sunbelt acquired us, and I thought was so brilliant, was, and I don't remember exactly how long they did this for, but when we were first acquired, it was nickel rental now powered by Sunbelt. They put it on our sign, they put it on our shirts. We still had our nickel rental logo on our shoulder.
Wow,
that's how
kinda
much
cool.
they wanted to honor the
history.
investment that those people
Wow.
had made in the business, and even the customers, to transition that from one to the other. That they
That's
weren't
actually
losing
kinda
what made nickel rental great. They were gaining the support of Sunbelt in taking that to what they wanted to be the next level of that business for those contractors, for those team members. And so I think it's kind of the same thing. I certainly have a different vision than Sunbelt did with a business. And so I want to take it a different place, but it is some of the same ideas of, what makes these folks great? What has made Northside successful for 70 years and loved by customers? We have customers that are 70 years old. What has made that great, and how do we do more of those things? And then do we see opportunities in the market for small contractors, for credit challenged customers who aren't being served as well, that using what we do best, places where we can win, where we can be the most successful, where we have shown over 70 years that we're really good, that we can target that. And so that's where I think it comes into that people and strategy is, can you look at those people and see what they're great at and the strengths that they have and the culture that it has, and then find a space that really works well in. And if you can marry the two of those together, I think magic can happen. So that's why I say strategy and people.
There we go.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can't disagree with that. So, Josh, you've had the chance to spend a lot of time in the stores so far. So,
Are you talking about general rental all the stores across the country you got to visit with the ARA, or are you talking specifically about Northside?
Well, specifically about Northside.
Okay.
And you did have a chance to spend a lot of time in rental stores, including Rental Max in your time at ARA, and I'm looking forward to doing a lot of those same things now that I'm in your old shoes, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, at kind of focusing a little bit more on some of the issues that are facing all rental companies at this point. I think you already had an experience with theft, which is a rampant problem, you know, challenging our industry for companies from Sunbelt and United down to Northside Tool Rental and companies, you know, single store operators out there. Tell us about that experience a little bit, and why is that such a problem that needs to be addressed?
I like how he says think, because he know I got something stolen from me. I think you might have had experience with that.
I just don't know the intimate details.
And
there's a vein. I realize this is just a podcast, so you're not seeing all of the visual that goes with it. There's a vein on Josh's head right now that's throbbing. That hit a soft spot with him.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes
It
with
hits a
people,
soft spot with you.
always, right? Sometimes with people, when they say we, especially when they work at a company, they mean that it happened to the company, it happened to us. But when I say something got stolen from me, I mean I was the person on the counter that day. I was standing next to them talking to the customer, trying to go, is this person trying to steal something from me today, or are they legitimate? They were a first-time renter, they were renting a mini skid, they had a Georgia driver's license, which appeared valid. We might talk about that more in a minute. They had a credit card that matched. The credit card scanned for the amount of money. They had tags on their vehicles that were Georgia tags. They gave us their mother's address where they said that they were working, and we looked that up on Google, and it looked like a real residential address where that type of work could have been done. Like, I couldn't grill them anymore fairly, at least with the technology that we were using that day, and they stole it. They had already sold it. They had sold it online prior to even coming, so it was already to the buyer within 24 hours and somewhere else. Like, it was amazing. But there is a
It is amazing.
They did a great job stealing that. Like, I'm impressed.
That's the problem, is they're doing more and more of that.
I have such a hard time with these criminals because I'm kind of impressed by some of them. Like, the really good ones, like, I wish they'd come work for me, because if I could take somebody with that kind of ingenuity and those thought processes, like, there's a lot of potential there. I guess they're taking advantage of that potential. They seem to be making decent money. But the good part of the story is we did have telematics on the unit.
Amen.
They sold it so fast, they didn't take the telematics off. Because they didn't care, because they'd already got their money.
Already sold it.
Yeah, so they sold the trailer and the mini skid. We actually got it back a couple days later from somebody who bought it, who thought it was legitimate. I'm using air quotes if you're not watching this. And the person who thought it was legitimate had it behind their house, covered in tarps with bricks on it. You know, that's definitely somebody who thought it was legitimate. But you know, all that to say, we talk about theft constantly, and you know, there are so many things I could have said if it had been stolen from somebody else in the company other than me, or some other peer in the industry. I'd be like, oh, well, you missed this cue, or you did this wrong. Like, I know the red flags. And they got me.
That's crazy.
And it kills me. It killed me that they were able to still get me, but there was no justifiable, non-biased reason that I could tell that person that they couldn't rent that piece of equipment today. Unless I start making it a terrible customer experience for people running equipment and say, well, if you're running a mini skid, then you have to put a $5,000 deposit down, or we just don't rent to non-contract. And they'll probably figure out a way around that stuff too. But the one thing that would have saved me, that it was technology that I didn't have that day, is driver's license scanning. It was a fake driver's license. The picture would not have matched the person. There are some tools out there. I know ARA is talking about implementing, and has launched some of those already, that if I had implemented that scanner, and that's another thing I'm actually kicking myself for, let's be honest. I spoke to Jeff Rogan, who leads membership at ARA, 3 days prior to this unit getting stolen. And he called me and said, hey Josh, when do you want to implement the driver's license scanning feature that you helped create? And you know what I told Jeff, and we all make mistakes, and we talked about trying to prioritize, right? I told Jeff, it's not my biggest priority. We do a pretty good job of this right now.
Right there, you did it.
3 days later, it got stolen from me, and it would have prevented it. So you got to be using some driver's license scanning. I am so glad that ARA has a partner for that. But man, it was painful. It was a painful few days.
Well, I share your pain. Over 6 years at Rental Max, we dealt with theft, in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
That just, really, it's like a feeling of personal violation, right? When somebody steals something from you, even if it's your company's, or either they're breaking into one of your stores, or they're standing right in front of you there, and basically lying to your face. It's fraud, right? It's a prime example of fraud. Just like Josh said, we had a store in Lake Zurich, a really nice area, well-to-do town. We'd actually had a theft at one of our other stores 3 days before, and our general manager said, well, they're not going to come up here. That night, they pried open an overhead door in the back of our shop. Wow. And stole chainsaws and small equipment that you can smash and grab and run off with.
We had one when I was working at Aaron. We had somebody, and it was the craziest thing. They just drove in with their pickup truck, pulled right up to where all the compressors were. Guy backed up to it. Service tech walked out and said, can I help you? And the guy says, yeah, I'm supposed to be grabbing this unit right here. He says they had to correct the paperwork. The service tech literally helps him hook it up on his truck, gets it all hooked up, hooks the chains up, does the whole thing. Guy drives out of the yard and just drives straight out. And the crazy thing is nobody picked it up. He didn't, just drove in. Didn't even have a rear plate didn't have plates on his vehicle, on his truck. Drove straight through and rolled right out. And it literally took like an hour or two, and then he came up and he's like, hey, did that, what contract was that guy on or whatever? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And they rewound the camera and were like, literally the guy was bold enough to just roll in, hook it up, and roll out.
Wow.
And you get so quick with those transactions, you gotta set up that level of security for every single level.
No doubt.
It's not just the person who's bold enough to, quote, steal it, but there's the person who rolls up into the yard. And we have trucks come in and out of the yard every day, all the time. And how do you know that somebody isn't throwing a jumping jack tamper? You know what I mean? You got to run the cords around it. And if you untie those during the day, somebody loads one up, and all of a sudden they're throwing a generator, they're throwing a compressor, they're throwing whatever on the back of their truck. And you have to make sure that you're watching everybody come in and out.
Yeah.
And just like every other part of the business, everybody on the team, everybody at the store plays a role in that.
Amen.
In that case, the person working in the yard, technician, they're not expecting that somebody's just going to, back up their truck and say, all right, I'm ready, here we go.
Let's go. It's a game now.
I think there's such a need, and nothing against any one individual. There's just such a need for awareness and training, and best practices.
Absolutely.
Because I think we all take for granted with the volume, that comes through our stores, especially when you're in the general rental space. there are just certain things that you take for granted.
Yeah,
and,
That's right.
and I think that best practices, that training, site security, all of the different ways that we can deter theft before it happens. Because, Josh, I think in your case you were lucky,
Super
right? I mean, in most thieves nowadays, as soon as they leave the yard, I mean, or if they steal a piece of equipment from a job site, those GPS trackers are gone. I mean, they're cutting those GPS trackers, and I mean, in some cases, and I think, rental companies are learning different ways, make multiple GPS trackers on a piece of equipment, hidden GPS trackers.
Air tags, all that.
Tags.
I had a unit 5 or 6 years ago that had 2 GPSs on it, and they found both GPSs. They looked for both GPSs. Wow. At the end of the day, it's following best practices to limit, not eliminate liability. Like, we're never going to
say that one more time, because I think that's a key. That's brilliant, by the way.
So following best practices to limit, not eliminate liability. Because if we make business so hard to do with us that we prevent any liability, we won't rent anything to anybody.
That's right.
Right.
On some level, we like to make the joke, I think Andrew Haysacker came up with it, that we take a $100,000 piece of equipment and give it to somebody with a hope and a dream. And it is kind of what we do.
In some cases,
But there are
Andrew.
things that we can do to minimize that. So, driver's license scanning is one that we're implementing now, because that would have helped. We took pictures of the tag was stolen too. The criminals get better, we got to get better. I think there's some other tools that ARA is also implementing over the next few months too that could be real helpful.
Absolutely, and I think that's the core focus of this program that that is really on the forefront of what we're working on at ARA and at all level, for all levels of the industry.
Yeah.
Because we're talking with the large rental companies about this. We're talking about independents. No matter the size, everybody's dealing with theft. And so, like when I was in Chicago, there was an ARA Chicagoland email group that would send out messages when you had these, what I'll call high-risk renters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was a good way for us to share information in that network, because a lot of it is localized, I think, in different markets, especially in big markets like Chicago and Atlanta. Having that communication, especially when you turn somebody away, they come to the store with a rented, U-Haul trailer and a truck. But just giving everybody a heads up that, hey, we turn this person away. I think there's a better way to do that, right? I mean, an email group is nice, but I don't think that is quick enough. I don't think that is, organized enough to really address the problem when you're trying to deter the fraudulent, renters.
Well, what is that we see happen too? Once a city catches on that we know a theft ring's in town, the theft ring goes somewhere else.
That's right.
Right?
Right, exactly.
We just need help guarding our rental equipment.
That's right. Yeah. And so I think the ID scanning software, like ARA is currently working on a program with Vouched as one example. I think that is a key part of it. Josh, you said in your case, that just doing that ID scan probably would have stopped you from renting that piece of equipment to that customer, right?
Yep.
That's one way that we can do it. Another way is having a database, really kind of a do not rent or a high risk rent.
Well, that
database.
would be a good idea. Across the industry is do it, if anyone grabs anything that looks highly sus or somebody who screwed them over, they permanently go into that database, so they have to start from scratch.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Because that's another checkpoint, right? And I think you have to be careful how you do that. I don't think it can't be a bad guy list, so to speak. I think we got to be careful about how are we qualifying people that we're putting on that list. I think we just need to be thoughtful of how we do that, especially as ARA if we're rolling this out to our members, and then for because anyone on the counter could be referencing this list. I think we have to go and take another step and focus on the education and the training. And I think that's where ARA is. We're working on a theft prevention program that can help our members with all of these areas of theft prevention. And really, I think it's a situation where we're stronger together. We're stronger as an industry together to be able to address an issue that is impacting everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if possible, I think that if we can vote, the sus list is what Elliott and I are voting for.
I heard Elliott drop
Yeah.
that sus.
Yeah.
I'm not that cool. I can't say that.
I don't
My
think I
kids
could
didn't
be-
say that.
Yeah, but I mean, your kids and my kids, I mean, my daughter Tommy, she's like, it's sus. And I'm like, okay.
That's
I
right.
totally understand what that means.
I like that. The sus list.
Yeah.
But to be clear, ARA is building this list that if we have an ERP that partners with it, we'll be able to tie into that so that we can access that list, right?
That's exactly right. That's what we're working on to bring to the industry in 2025.
That'll be amazing.
So-
It's many things that I can do to help guard the equipment and make rental easier is going to be super helpful for me.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So wrapping up this segment, and obviously we've got a lot of things to unravel today.
No doubt.
I think I kind of want to get into a little bit of the politics that are coming up because I think we had a political change recently. So I think we should do that for the next segment. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Something happened in politics? I didn't hear.
You know what? Hold off. Let's discuss it in the next segment.
Okay.
All right, let's do that.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and we'll be back to talk politics.